Hello and welcome to the quarterfinal between Australia and Italy here at the World Magic Cup. The winner of this one will go on to face France. And speaking to the Australians, they would dearly love for that to happen. They think that their matchups break fairly well in terms of the way that they go against France. But unfortunately for them, they don't think that their exact matchups go quite as well in this quarterfinal. Might have to battle back a little bit. And we're starting things off with the two team captains, Andrea Mengucci, Mr. World Magic Cup, up against David Mines of Australia, and kicking things off with that Wild Growth Walker.
As he has for most of the tournament, whenever we've seen Andrea Mengucci in the feature match area, he has that turn to Wild Growth Walker, and I would be very surprised. Oh, no third land, no Jade Light Ranger, no Merfolk Branch Walker. What's happening for Andrea Mengucci?
This could be a little bit of a problem. There's already the accelerant of Druid of the Cowl in play for David Mines, meaning in principle he could go for a 4-drop here, and that's exactly what we see happen in Ravenous Chupacabra to clear Mengucci's side of the board.
And he lands for Mengucci just another Jade Light Ranger. He has double Carnage Tyrant. His hand was set up pretty well, but he needed that third land. Did not find. Look at that hand. Double Tyrant, double Ranger, Contempt, Finality, Trophy, whatever you like. But Mines is putting on the blows here with Vivian Reed as well.
Oh my goodness, everything working for Team Australia here in the early teams. The team captains just battling against each other, Mines having everything, and Mengucci, if he doesn't find a land, he's going to be out of this very soon, as Vivian Reed means that, wow, that pretty much the quickest game we've seen in the entirety of the World Magic Cup. David Mines picking up game one, and Mengucci just picking up his cards.
Yeah, and just Benaya Leah of Australia just looking at the match and like, what just happened? Did you just win? And David Mines like, yep, yeah, I just did.
Yeah, Minesy, he's pretty chill about how things go. He's just enjoying himself the whole way through and able to just sort of say, yep, you know, I got this. What are you doing? You're meant to be the aggro deck. Speed up a little bit, mate.
Very nice.
Saproling Migration here alongside the Maratandris coming along. The Soul of the Accord there in play already for Selesnya tokens. Selesnya tokens against the Boros Weenie deck of Lee on the other side of things. The Italians believe that the Selesnya deck should be favored here. How do you feel about that one, Matteo?
Yeah, it sounds about right. The particular build of David Mines does have a few cards that I think might serve them very well here. Especially the 2 copies of Aurelia, Exemplar of Justice, are very good against the Celestian Tokens deck. If they don't have an answer in the form of Conclave Tribunal, the game can be very over. And but looking at what Leah is doing here, turn 1 Legion landing, turn 2 Bullet Challenger is decent. Oh, and a Venerated Loxodon, there it is. Only plays 2 copies of this big elephant, but serves him really well here.
Turns out that Convoke not just for the Selesnya, as it turns out. The Venerated Loxodon does not mind teaming up with Team Boros every now and again. And the Mentor ability on this Boros Challenger will mean that potentially some of these Vampire tokens actually represent a pretty nice bit of life gain in what is likely to be something of a race.
Yeah, Tianfa Moon has a Venerated Loxodon of his own. Alongside a couple of decent cards here, but in these sorts of matchups, the person with the first Venerated Loxodon, if they're not behind on the board too much, is actually doing really well because they can immediately attack. And if the opponent only has a Venerated Loxodon to tap down most of their guys, it's actually not that great. And we see the Anti-Vanguard. Is Moon going to play his Loxodon as well and just tap out against the potential huge attacks from the Australian?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the exact elements of what's in Lee's hand, this could be a bit of a disaster for Team Italy, as yes, we do see a big Venerated Loxodon coming down, so next turn Moon will be in fantastic shape. But if it worked out that, for example, Lee had some heroic reinforcements, and there are 4 copies in his deck, then this very next turn could prove to be utter carnage without even the need for a Carnage Tyrant.
Indeed, and it might be a very big turn for Leah here, because I do see a Lava Coil in his hand. The Amara created an additional blocker here, which was really good for Moon. But he also found a Dauntless Bodyguard there. But he might just Lava Coil the Venerated Loxodon, swing with his whole team, Mentor on one of the Vampires, flip Legion's Landing, and maybe follow that with one more creature here and put him in the driver's seat. But once Moon untaps, the Celestian Tokens deck is favored, because if it can stabilize, it has some huge plays, such as Trostani, such as March of the Multitudes, and we'll just have to see if Leah will get there.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame for him that he's not been able to get things going with an early heroic reinforcements here. He's likely to have the 4th land in effect this turn from a big swing here, transforming his Legion landing. But even heroic reinforcements next turn, it does represent a lot of damage coming from this deck here.
Yeah, potentially. There's still only 3 lands here for, not now 4, with thanks to the flipping of the Danto, the first fort. Big swing here. Heroic reinforcements are very much a life card.
And no really great blocks this turn for Moon. I believe that he does have the potential for a Trostani later on, and of course March of the Multitudes. But right now, things working pretty nicely for Lee, getting in some early damage and threatening to not do it in one big swing, but potentially in 2.
Yeah, this is a very good spot for Leah here with the swing. It was a very big one. I think it was 12. Maybe 13. So Moon down to 8 here.
And 5 points of life gain as well on that attack. So Lee's life total relatively safe here.
And now, unfortunately for Leo, he doesn't have another Red Source. Otherwise, he would have played another Boros Challenger here. So he's just going to have a Dauntless Bodyguard. His hand does have a Conclave Tribunal, which is good against maybe something like a Trostani. But I already see in Tian Famun's hand, he's already has the March of the Multitudes. So once he untaps with all of his creatures and his board is fairly wide, those 1/1s are going to be pretty good at stopping the onslaught from Leah here.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. March of the Multitudes, the fact that it can kind of fog the turn, but also generate life gain, but also mean you've got a wide board, so if you've got pump effects, they get even better. It's a very, very powerful card indeed, and it will mean that this straightforward ground attack from Boros aggro gets a lot tougher. It will be really interesting to see how this plays out in this next turn or two, whether or not Lee can kind of get over the top, cement the advantage he's had in these early turns.
Yeah, the one good advantage for Leo, so while all his creatures are only like attacking on the ground, can be easily chump blocked. Their sizes are relatively good. Even the small vampires at the start now with the Mentor and the Loxodon counters mean that they're at 3/3s. They're great size because they can't be just blocked by a single creature and trade off, except for the Amara, which is a 3/3.
So just a conspicuous pass from Selesnya tokens. This is something we've come to learn over the course of the tournament. Tends to spell exactly one thing, that one thing being March of the Multitudes. And this will be a moment where Lee just maybe looks across to his side and his teammate David Mines and says, I mean, do I still just go for it? And I think the answer may well be yes.
Yeah, I think so. The sizing on the creatures is fairly decent, especially with also the Boros Challenger potential pump. And Bodyguard can protect the Loxodon if it was double blocked. It lines up decently well for Leo, but it's not a huge advantage. And I think it's not just the March of the Multitudes that might come down here. It's what will follow it. If there's a Trostani, if there's other ways to pump up his creatures, it could be trouble for Leo. But so far, the ball is firm in his court. And let's see if he can press on.
So it goes with the line of Boros Challenger plus another Dauntless Bodyguard here, basically trying to set up for a later turn in terms of the gigantic attack here. The second Dauntless Bodyguard is going to be protecting the Boros Challenger that's larger in play. Gets a little marker there.
Protected. All right. And Conclave Tribunal, so using all those creatures that he played, so he's going to remove the biggest creatures on the side of Moon, who's going to pull the trigger here and creates, well, 6 1/1s plus the 1 from Amara, so 7 1/1 lifelinkers in total.
March of the Multitudes, it really does allow you to snowball in terms of the amount of creatures that you have in play. If it works out that Moon draws a second March of the Multitudes, essentially, you know, our board just doesn't become wide enough to fit all of these tokens on it. As things stand, it will mean that it's going to be really tough for Lee to actually make any attacks and sneak through meaningful amounts of damage here, which is a bit of a frustration for him, given that he was able to get Moon down to 8 so quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting of how this plays out, because he can attack with everything that he has left, make the vampire into a 3/3 here, and force some assortment of blocks. It's just not going to deal much damage. He's not going to make much headway into Moon's life total. But the game is going to hinge on what Moon is doing rather than what Lee has, because of, I see his hand is not that great actually. It's just Johnny, Adversary Tyrants, and a Conclave Tribunal. So not really the powerhouse cards you want from your Celestian tokens deck just yet. But I'm sure that you can find some at least decent blockers to stop the bleeding. Maybe the Italians will be able to draw some big hitters here. Even though Johnny himself is already okay if you've got such a huge board to protect him.
Yeah, it's not going to take too much blocking for Moon here to stay alive. All of those tokens that he has do have lifelink. So one of the decisions for him will be, can I aim at killing some of these creatures that are attacking in just by doing some big multiple blocks? And it looks like that's exactly his plan. He throws a lot of tokens at vampires. The reason he's blocked with so many, firstly, he secures the kill. He also gets that lifelink, though, meaning that all of a sudden he goes from 8 all the way up to 14 life. He's not really... His board is essentially the same as it was before he cast March of the Multitudes now, but on the other side of things, Lee has lost those larger life-linking vampires. He's tapped out in terms of creatures now, so potentially Moon could get a bit of a swing in if he really wanted to. Yeah, he's managed to essentially time walk himself, time walk his opponent just by using one March of the Multitudes.
Yeah, kill 2 creatures is nice. The life total didn't really change. It worked out in a way that Moon lost 7, gained 7. So stayed on 8 here. And the board looking much more clearer now. And I think Moon has the Conclave Tribune in his hand, which is actually like taking away one of the big threats on Leah's side of the board is actually quite important. And also drew a Legion's Landing, it seems. So another life-linking creature.
Legion's Landing, essentially mana neutral when it comes to Conclave Tribunal. You get to tap the token that you've made to be able to make a little bit of mana. And in fact,
I like this.
Given that he's attacking with 3 creatures anyway, it's almost a little ritual when it comes to casting Conclave Tribunal, because Adanto, the first fort, is now on deck as the Legion's Landing has transformed.
Yeah, let's see what else if he's going to decide to go for the Tribunal or the Ajani. I would expect Ajani with some +1/+1 counters, potentially. Oh no, he's going to go for the Tribunal and take away the Boros Challenger with a counter. Okay, just makes the board a little bit smaller here, and he can afford to take a hit from the Challenger and the Venerate Loxodon. And the 2/1 bodyguards are not really a threat from Leah here. Heroic Reinforcement would still be very good here.
And I believe that there is a Heroic Reinforcements in hand for Lee. I haven't quite worked out whether or not it's going to be lethal, but it will certainly take a big old chunk out of Moon's life total and mean that he's forced to do some big blocks here.
Yeah, I think he was out of cards and he just drew a Sacred Foundry. So no Heroic Reinforcements just yet. He does have the Boros Challenger, which is actually sized really nicely for this sort of matchup. The 3 toughness and the Mentor coming in handy. You might even see a pump effect sooner or later.
So Lee having to carefully figure out what he's got going on here.
Yeah, because at one of the angles of the whole big March of the Multi is the fact that Moon could start swinging back with some life linkers and pad his life total a little bit there, while he can still trade off those saprolings somehow. All right. Swing with everything here. Lee is just being aggressive. I like it.
Moon going to carefully count up exactly what it is that he's facing here.
Yeah, remember, here 4 mana open means the Boros Challenger can grow up to a 3/4.
No initial pump on attacks though, so the Mentor does not trigger here. Double block on that Boros Challenger.
Yeah, so there's going to be a 6 damage, gain 1 life gain back, so Moon's going to go down to 5 here. Again, trade off some of the small creatures for better guys here, and we might just be in a Adanto the first fort face-off.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately is going to favor the Selesnya tokens list. It's the one that can leverage having more creatures in play a little bit more easily. For Lee here, it's pretty much that Heroic Reinforcements or bust, and he's going to need it very soon indeed.
Yeah, and if Moon just might decide to start closing the door here. He's been holding the Johnny Adversary Tyrants for a while. Also draws another Legion's Landing. And while only swinging with the Vanguard before, he's now going to play the Ajani, and I assume put some +1/+1 counters on his life-linking creatures.
Yeah, having access to this additional lifelink has just proven so useful for Moon over the course of this game. He has easily gained more life than... like, the only reason that he's alive is because of the life that he's gained. There we go, we figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, like, he played the Martial Multi for 7. I mean, that just in itself is a huge swing. And normally, many decks cannot deal with such a big march, but Leah was such an aggressor in the early turns that yeah, Moon really put it to good use on trading duty.
So Lee here, it's been a tricky old game for him. He's not been able to find the final points of damage that he really needs here, and with each turn that he draws land here, it's going to work out very, very poorly for him. I mean, I would say that this Boros list, at least in game 1, once it gets up to 5 land, that's as many lands as it ever really wants. Occasionally it'll want to go spell, but by and large, just at this stage, every single threat is what he wants to find rather than more lands.
Yeah, I love these blocks from Moon. Get some nice life back from his soldiers. And while it trades away with two of the tutus, it looks like the Ajani will go unopposed for the moment. This just spells trouble for the Australians here. There's so many good draws for Moon as well. And also he's ahead on board now. The Ajani's just going to bring counters, more and more counters here, and it's just going to make it impossible for Lee to make a significant attack.
Now, a quick update on one of our other tables. Basilico has won his game 1 against Garnham. Turns out that the Italian prophecy of Is It Drake's being good against Turbo Fog, at least thus far, coming true. I mean, these guys, they have already faced off over the course of this weekend. Can't quite remember at what point in the tournament that was. It may well have been in the sealed, but the Australians looking for a bit of redemption here, and thus far only David Mines able to pick up an early win, and his was easily the first game win of the match thus far, as Andrea Mengucci simply not finding the lands that he needed.
History of Benalia. Okay, that's a good card. Might be a little bit too late. I still keeping the advantage bar on Tian Famun's side, who has that Ajani, who, I mean, it probably won't go off into the emblem stage, but still a sizable threat, even though he's pretty exposed for now.
Yeah, and it's almost sort of forcing Lee to consider actually attacking but not attacking into Moon himself. Typically these Boros lists, they just want to be pretty single-minded in killing off their opponent. Right now, though, that Ajani does look a little bit scary here.
And they do decide to go for an attack onto the Ajani, and just it's going to be a 1/1 soldier made with the Danto, a small trade. Ajani's just going to take 1 here. Lee is going to lose his board, and at this point, even with the History of Benalia, I think Moon will have what it takes to close out the games. March of the Multitudes, Immortal Sun, Trostani, all these cards will close the game almost immediately. But even if he doesn't draw them, he should still be in a really good shape.
Yeah, very, very tough one here for Lee to get out of. It's looking all things Moon working out here. A Danto Vanguard, I mean, even just as a regular 1/1 that's getting extra power while attacking, already pretty scary, very difficult to kill off. And now with the Vanguard being a 3/3 already thanks to Ajani, that indestructibility ability less likely to even be a concern for Moon. He's got 13 life to work with. He probably won't need to pay 4 of it in order to be able to make sure that his Vampire Soldier can just keep on attacking.
Yeah. Moon's gonna make a Vampire, put a counter on it together with this life-flicking Soldier here. Oh, Adanto it is. He can't decide. He's probably waiting on Andrea to tell him. Yeah, is it the small Soldier it is. And that's a big swing. That's an attack for 9 here, just from the 2 creatures.
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes think of Selesnya as being the deck that goes very wide, gets a lot of creatures on the battlefield, and is able to win games by attacking around the blockers of opponents. But in this case, Moon content to go straight on over the top of the lone knight that's trying to defend Lee's life total there. Lee kind of decides that discretion the better part of valor. He's going to leave the knight back for now, not block with it, and hope for something better in future turns. But it's going to have to be very good indeed if he is going to find a way out of this game. Moon now on 17 life. That a much bigger ask than he was on early stages of this game. And it may well be that we're seeing Team Italy winning 2 of the first 3 games in this last quarterfinal.
It might be. I mean, just another land for the Australian player here on our right. He's really been quite unfortunate in only really drawing lands here after the first few turns, whereas where he needed something like an Aurelia, something powerful to get through this board, and just didn't find it. And I now think that Moon has what it takes to take it home, despite the history of Benalia from the previous turn on Lie's side.
All right, Moon now just on cleanup duty, really. The creatures on the other side of the battlefield basically all forced to block at this point. An emblem is potentially not far off, and the Archer of Erazka means that it will be Moon potentially able to not only make more tokens but draw extra cards and basically do everything that anyone could want to in a game of Magic. The final thing that he'll be able to achieve here is, of course, winning the game, which is certainly a noble cause for anyone getting involved at this point.
Yeah, more counters on the soldier, now up to a 5/5. Both creatures have to be blocked. They have 5 power, and Ajani is already threatening an emblem potentially here.
Yeah, sometimes Ajani brings cats, and it may well be that we get a chance to see that if this game is going to be going on much longer.
Yeah, it's going to be a chump block, and just gaining two life. And Moon will be more than happy, I think, to just protect his Ajani with the vampire he has on defense. Lee is really out of time.
And this is what happens in this matchup when you give the Selesnya deck time. It has the potential to get overrun in the very early stages of the game if maybe its draws don't line up well against its opponents. But once it gets to actually leverage some of what it can do with time and mana, it can just generate these boards that, I mean, very frequently I'll walk across to a Selesnya tokens match and it'll be what I refer to as a messy board. There will be an awful lot of permanents in play, and that's where Selesnya likes it. When Selesnya's got plenty of permanents in play, it probably is winning the game, and right now that's certainly true.
There's the Snubhorn Sentry. A little bit too late here, but he does have exactly 10, counting that Conclave Tribunal as well.
The City's Blessing in evidence, but ultimately that's not going to be so important simply as the fact that it's Moon with all of the action here. He's got his Planeswalker able to get an emblem.
There it is.
So at the beginning of each end step, he's going to be creating 3/1/1 white cat tokens with lifelink. It's maybe not the first cat that gets you, but those cats, they're going to keep on coming.
Yeah, here's a swing with both these creatures. Now, not both of them have to be blocked because they're both 5 power and they gain some life back with those vampires, but this is yeah, the win for Moon is like, if I could push the advantage bar even more to the left, I would. This is as a slam dunk of a game as I ever seen.
Yeah, and I don't think there's literally a single card that Lee can draw here that will actually win him this game anytime soon. This is not a matchup where there's a ton of mass removal lying around in his deck. He's not got any sneaky settle the wreckages, at least certainly not in this game, that might be able to punish Moon. But even if he did have, Moon's generating more cat tokens at the end of each and every turn, so it's not as if him swinging for the fence with his creatures even will ever leave him without blockers.
Yeah, true. Plus, he has that Archer of Erazka, bringing him more cards. Also, Adanta if he wants some more life linkers. It's fairly academical at this point. Just another mountain for Lier. Yeah, and he now decides to scoop him up. His draws just really didn't line up, and advantage Italy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was something that Lee briefly looked like he had the potential to swing it. If he'd drawn a Heroic Reinforcements for a number of turns, he might have been all the way over there, but not quite able to piece it together. We're going to get a chance to see a little bit of our Turbo Fog matchup on one of our back tables soon enough. Those guys in action. There's already a Teferi in play for our Turbo Fog player, that being Matthew Garnham. On the other side of things, though, Mattia Basilico, while he had a Drake, he didn't have a Hope, and that one been squared up, and we hear a little round of applause. A few fans for the Australian team in evidence here in Barcelona, Spain.
Of course, Ben Sek, our good friend.
Yeah, now living in Barcelona, but originally hailing from Australia, so he's able to enjoy things without maybe as much jet lag as even the Australian team themselves.
Yeah, so we're going to get the chance to see the captains again. Mengucci against Mines in the middle. Let's see if Mengucci can draw some lands and if we'll have a proper game this time around.
That little thumbs up there from the sleeves of David Mines. Gideon very happy with how the last game went in terms of what Mines was able to achieve. We didn't really have a real game, to be perfectly honest. Not enough lands, meaning not enough magic, but maybe a little chance for Mengucci to catch up with his teammates in terms of the number of game wins that they've been able to achieve.
Yeah, I think in the first game, what happened was exactly what Mengucci said is important in the Golgari mirror match. Get ahead on mana with your mana creature, out-mana your opponent, and he's doing it here again, so that you can get the big guys on the board and create card advantage for yourself.
Yeah, Druid of the Cowl into Ravenous Chupacabra to kill your opponent's Druid of the Cowl. Pretty much ideal. Merfolk Branchwalker means that David Mines will not be missing land drops in the same way that Mengucci did, but look how far behind he is on the battlefield now.
Yeah, now if we're going to see a Vivian Reed, that's going to be even worse. No Vivian Reed, just a Jade Light Ranger, but I did already see a Carnage Tyrant in Mengucci's hand. So, yeah, the Assassin's Trophy is also decent. That's why he's keeping it here.
Yeah, having the Carnage Tyrant in hand already, having the Druid of the Cowl such that he'll be able to play it a turn early, all of these, the kind of things that you want to achieve in order to get a little bit ahead in this mirror match.
Yeah, that's why Chupacabra is going to kill the Druid of the Cowl here, because David Mines recognizes that he would have a really hard time dealing with Carnage Tyrant if Andrea Mengucci would play it once he untaps. So this early mana game is very important, and even in trade for the Ravenous Chupacabra with the Jade Light Ranger. Also, the players like having their Chupacabras in their graveyard so they can bring them back with their finds. Speaking
Find, or indeed Memorial to Folly. This time round, Find, though, getting Ravenous Chupacabra and Jade Light Ranger with the mana to replay it. Nice play here from Mengucci. And I must say that something that I'm loving from this particular match is that both these players, they know what's going on. They've played this matchup plenty, and the pace that they're playing at is
great.
It's really brisk, and that helpful both in terms of, you know, keeping our game moving along as the Eldest Reborn kills off that Jade Light Ranger. Also helpful for their team, though, because it means that if this match completes relatively quickly, all of a sudden you get some extra heads to be able to help out on those other tables.
Yeah, Mines will have a mind-blowing play on the next turn, as the Eldest Reborn usually want to use it to kill Carnage Tyrants, but now I think he has a Detection Tower in his hand, so he might be able to take away the Hexproof, and unfortunately not Chupacabra for the Australian team, but he does have a Vraska's Contempt, so at least one way to get rid of the Carnage Tyrant.
Detection Tower, Mirror Breaker, because killing off Carnage Tyrant, a very, very important play there. Gets to get rid of the first Carnage Tyrant, gains a couple of life in the process. Sadly, that Carnage Tyrant, of course, exiled, so it won't be coming back from the Eldest Reborn, but I do not think that Mines is going to mind all that much. Assassin's Trophy on the Eldest Reborn there. Mines will get a land, but ultimately Mengucci would rather that his opponent had an extra land in play rather than one of his juicy creatures.
Yeah, I think Mines would have possibly have access to a Midnight Reaper, which would be decent on an empty board, and in these card advantage battles, the Midnight Reapers are actually quite relevant because it allows you to play out your creatures, so even if your opponent does have the finality, you're going to get to draw some cards.
So, David Mines, he's the one with the Detection Tower, so he's less afraid of Carnage Tyrant. He's got more cards in hand than his opponent right now, and indeed more lands in play. Life totals, we won't worry about them too much yet. I mean, this is not the point where I'd say that someone has a decisive advantage, but small edges beginning to lean in Mines' direction, and as his Carnage Tyrant comes down, it really asks a question of what Mengucci can do with his draw.
The difference in this game comes down to one card. Both players play one copy. It is the Detection Tower. Mengucci has Vraska's Contempt and Ravenous Chupacabra in his hand. Cannot deal with the Carnage Tyrant, though, and David Mines, can he add another one to the board? No, he's going to go for maybe a Midnight Reaper. Possibly some of the other creatures. Look at the options he has. He also has a Merfolk Branchwalker, so plenty of good stuff. Jade Light Ranger as well. Lana Wells, no, not necessary anymore. Land is nice as well. I think David Mines is doing fantastically well here. If Andrea Mengucci does not draw a Detection Towers of his own, or maybe his own Carnage Tyrant, this might be over.
Yeah, I mean, conveniently, when it comes to eking out a win with Carnage Tyrant, it's not as if it's going to take you a very long time. Eking's probably not quite the right word, because those swings for 7, they do not need many of them to finish off these games.
Plus, there's also the Midnight Reaper and the Jade Light Ranger. So the Reaper gets exiled with the Vraska's Contempt. Can Mengucci find an answer to the Carnage Tyrant?
I guess that one line of play that's potentially interesting for Mengucci if he wants to go for sort of the really long game is Detection Tower. We know it's very good against Carnage Tyrant. if it works out that Mengucci finds a Carnage Tower into his own, he might want to use an Assassin's Trophy on the detection tower of his opponent.
Interesting.
Vivian Reed here, that allows Mengucci to dig just a little bit, try and find something that will help him out of the hole that he finds himself in there. Assassin's Trophy, it can destroy any permanent. It's not very often that you destroy lands with it because they also get to search out lands, but I think Detection Tower probably qualifies as being a reasonable target.
Yeah, at this point, definitely. Just a forest off of the Branch Rocker. I mean, Andrea Mengucci would have loved to have seen a Detection Tower this game. His hand was chock full of removal. No way to deal with that Carnage Tyrant just yet, as Mines draws a Chupacabra. And now Mines, the only decision he has to do, does he attack Face or does he attack Vivian Reed?
I mean, I know that I kind of like just going Face here, and it takes a whole extra turn off the clock, gives Mengucci fewer opportunities to draw things. I'm not entirely sure that the creatures that can be drawn here are the biggest worries for David Mines.
Vivian Reed can find a Carnage Tyrant, which is a great way to stop another Carnage Tyrant, and looks like a find. Brings back Branch Walker and a Ravenous Chupacabra. I think Mines just wants to put enough power on the board so that he can actually win the following turn, and he does have it now. There's actually 14 power, so that will force Mengucci to play out his Chupacabra, probably to kill Jade Light Ranger. Okay, one more blocker as well. Doesn't want Karn. He'll take a Memorial to Folly. And
he has little choice. The Memorial to Folly coming down along with Ravenous Chupacabra. So there's a Jade Light Ranger dealt with and a few blockers here, but for Andrea Mengucci, this is a bit of a problem. His teammates, they've won their game ones, but Garnham already forcing a game 3 between himself and Mattia Basilico. Turbo Fog versus Is It Drakes. If David Mines can pick up the win here, then it means that a lot of pressure on this remaining Italian team after their captain potentially losing out.
Yeah, I think this might just be over. Chupacabra on the Reaper, on the Jade Light Ranger, and an Assassin's Trophy as well. Swing for only 11, but I think there's no outs for Andrea Mengucci. And match point Australia.
Fantastic stuff from Team Australia. David Mines there. Just looks like any other day at the office for him. He knows that he still has 2 teammates that need to find wins in order for him to be able to actually start the real celebrations of getting through to the semi-finals here at the World Magic Cup in Barcelona, Spain. And here we're going to get a chance to see the decider between Mattia Basilico and Matthew Garnham. Is It Drakes on the left-hand side of our screen for Italy, but this Turbo Fog deck of Garnham's, it went from being an outlier that the Italians really didn't think could be any sort of competition. They started testing against it, and Mengucci was like, this deck seems like a real deck. It seems pretty good here.
Yeah, the advantage for the Turbo Fog deck was apparent in game 1, where the Is It Drakes has a bunch of dead cards such as Shock, Lava Coil, things that really have no real effect on the game, because Turbo Fog doesn't really play any creatures. But Basilico won game 1, and it was Garnham actually who managed to win game 2, even though we saw the back end of that game, and I thought Basilico conceded way too early, considering that Garnham, okay, he had a Teferi and was just shuffling back a Nexus of Fate, but it usually takes a while before the deck really gets going in that regard. And one of the things that is very good against the Turbo Fog deck is Niv Mizzet, because even if you're not maybe taking turns, you're getting to ping for some damage.
Yeah, it's kind of cute, the notion of, well, they're taking all the turns, but they're taking a point of damage every time they cast that Nexus of Fate. Whether or not that's a winning line on its own, I'm not quite sure, but it's certainly a little bit of a laugh here as we have Basilico versus Garnham. Things kicking off with Discovery Dispersal, or Discovery, as it turns out, almost always for the Is It Drakes list here. Early doors, this Is It Drakes list perfectly fine with just loading that graveyard with plenty of spells, because really what it wants to achieve is to at least force the fog effects to come from the other side of things by having scary enough Drakes with enough spells in the graveyard that it makes life difficult for Turbo Fog, requires it to have a fog effect each and every turn.
Yeah, that's why I would love to see Basilico play the Enigma Drake here over the treasure map, just to put on some early pressure on Garnham and force him maybe to go into those early fogs that you mentioned. And he is trapping 3 mana, and it is that Enigma Drake. Basilico has decent follow-ups as well. He has an Opt, he has a Charter Course, he actually kept a Shock in as well. probably maybe didn't have enough cards to sideboard out. At least Shock, you can aim that at a Teferi.
And this is a matchup they have tested a fair bit. We walked past Team Italy having built up the Turbo Fog list overnight so that they could get a little bit of practice in. A Gift of Paradise coming down for Garnham, which will garnish his life just a little bit there. 3 extra life, and it interacts very neatly with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria.
Yeah, and it's a very important play in the early game because it really ramps up on what you're doing in the late game. And I already see he also has some Spell Pierces and a Chemister's Insight, so he can really start going into a few cards. And he padded his life total as well. I mean, Gift of Paradise is a critical part of the Turbo Fog deck.
Yeah, it seems strange. There are so many cards that are sort of counterintuitive to be in high-level tournament Magic that end up in lists like the Turbo Fog list that has a very straightforward plan that is not the norm. It's looking to essentially stop all of the attack steps of any great merit from the other side of things using some mix of the likes of Pause for Reflection, Root Snare, that sort of thing. Yeah. And then ultimately take a lot of extra turns with the likes of... Where am I going here?
Nexus of Fate?
There we go. Little moment there for but yeah, the Nexus of Fate, as you're able to take lots of extra turns, gradually you can eke out an advantage with your Planeswalkers. On the other side of things, Basilico, he's getting some early attacks in with this Enigma Drake. Now obviously this attack, there was no way that Garnham could stop it, and in some respects the smaller attacks he kind of wants to allow through so that he can save his fogs for when they're going to be lethal. But seeing a shock from the other side of things may give him a bit of pause, because he needs to bear in mind that if he lets himself dip too low, the likes of Shock, the likes of Niv Mizzet could mean that actually the attack step is not where he loses this game.
Yeah, and there's another Gift of Paradise, so I mean, double Gift of Paradise is exactly where you want to be. Garnham deciding to ramp up his mana rather than draw some cards. This also allows him to have double Spell Pierce up. And while I like the attack the previous turn from Mattia Basilico, the best way for him to go about this game is try to build up his mana. I think Treasure Map is going to get played here, so he can scry himself into more lands. He does have another land as well, so he's only really one away from that Niv Mizzet.
Okay, a Charter Course coming here. This will stop plenty of spells in the graveyard, and has managed to find himself another Drake, I believe. Double Drake is the point where you are essentially attacking for, well, maybe not lethal, but certainly close to it almost every turn here.
Yeah, he actually goes and discards the Treasure Map, deciding that it's not where he wants to be. And he does have a land. I'm thinking I don't think he's going to play the other Charter Course, because he's just scared. He wants to leave up the Disdainful Stroke, because the Nexus of once the Nexi of Fate, is that the plural, or do I have to say Nexuses?
I will let you go with whichever you prefer here, Matei. You've earned it.
Thank you. I'm not a native English speaker, so I can say what I want here. And look at that, just the land and pass from Matthew Garnham here. I'm sure Mattia Basilico must be a little bit surprised at least. Doesn't draw another land though, just a Treasure Map.
So yeah, for Garnham, he's got Nexus of Fate, he's got Chemist's Insight, he's got a couple of Spell Pierce, all of these instant speed interaction. Charter Course from the other side of things, Basilico just loading up that graveyard and challenging his opponent to find something to say about it. So here comes Chemist's Insight from Garnham.
And that resolves, looks like. More Spell Pierces from Garnham. He has all the Spell Pierces in the world, but they don't look that good right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Basilico here, your Enigma Sphinx already, Enigma Drake rather, already represents quite a lot of damage, and getting Garnham down to below 10 means that the likelihood of Niv Mizzet being able to close things out, even if we start to find a lot of fogs from the other side of things, it seems like a reasonable game plan.
Yeah, I really like Basilico's very aggressive Steam Vents, take 2, even though in his hand there's only the Disdainful Stroke, nothing really else he can cast, but I think it sends a strong message towards Matthew Garnham that, look, I have a bunch of spells I can cast here. You should be careful about what you're doing here.
And it's a play with almost no downside for Basilico, because it's not as if Garnham's list is really planning on applying any damage in any meaningful way. And Garnham just contenting himself with still more copies of Gift of Paradise. He's not really had a typical draw here for even an atypical deck in this field. Passes with 6 mana available thanks to 2 Gift of Paradise and 2 more untapped lands. Not quite enough that he can start taking extra turns, but enough that relatively soon when he does try and take extra turns, he's going to have counter Magic to be able to make sure that they actually resolve.
This is a really weird game of Magic because Garnham drew 3 Gift of Paradise, which is fine to pay lifestyle. I mean, it has gained him 9 life over the game, which is nice that he doesn't need any fogs here against the Enigma Drake. But it hasn't really gotten him anywhere, and he just keeps on drawing Spell Pierces, which get worse the longer the game goes. And if Basilico, I don't think he's going to go for Niv-Miss just here. I think he might just be scared of something like a Teferi, or maybe other fireworks in the form of multiple Nexi of Fate.
Yeah, Basilico having a little think here. He's got Andrea Mengucci by his side to potentially offer a second line of reasoning. Mengucci was the person that was playing Turbo Fog while they were testing, so he's got a bit of a sense of the other side of things and can potentially give Basilico a little bit of extra insight when it comes to figuring out how to navigate these next few turns.
All right, so it does seem like it's going to be a Ral. Is it Viceroy? And this might be the big turn for Garnham here. He first goes for the Chemist's Insight, discarding one of the lands, I believe a Plains. Yep, there we go. That goes on the stack, and that resolves. Okay, draws 2 cards. Now I want to see some action from Garnham. He does have the Nexus of Fate, so he's going to start with 1 Spell Pierce, and now he's basically hoping to tap Mattia Basilico out.
Now, Spell Pierce is not a card that Garnham can counter, but if he wants to resolve Ral, at the moment, on the face of things, he's able to do so simply by tapping those last 2 remaining lands to pay for the Spell Pierce. Now, there's a fairly strong signal from Garnham that there must be some other action, and we see there that, yes, Basilico just lets his Planeswalker go to the graveyard, valuing having 2 mana up more than anything else. But, of course, if he's going to play the likes of, for example, Disdainful Stroke, that means that by definition, he will not have the mana to pay for the next Spell Pierce.
Yeah. If Garnham draws a Teferi here, it could be backbreaking, because with so many Gift of Paradise, he has plenty of mana. He does have a Cleansing Nova, so he can definitely get rid of the Enigma Drake here and give him some breathing room. But he's going to start off with, I think, a Nexus of Fate first. Basically, a really expensive Time Walk.
A really expensive Time Walk that shuffles itself back into your deck, and that's the reason this Turbo Fog list doesn't need to have very many ways of taking extra turns. Gradually over the course of the game, it will filter its way through until the deck is relatively thin, and you can rely on, especially with a Planeswalker in play, finding that Nexus of Fate again and again and again. And at some point, it doesn't become so unreasonable to string these together, especially if you've got Azcanta the Sunken Ruin maybe working on your side, that you get to have 3, 4, maybe even 5 turns in a row, and you've got a Planeswalker alongside. That's very, very good indeed. Quick update for you on one of the other matches that's going on. Selesnya tokens in the hands of Tianfa Moon has taken a 2-0 win over Lee. That means that this game will decide things between Italy and Australia. Dramatic stuff here in Barcelona, Spain, as it's all down to Matthew Garnham. If he wants to win it for Australia, if he wants to get a chance for potentially a little bit of an easier matchup, Selesnya in the semi-finals against France, he needs to win this game against Is It Drakes. He's taken 1 extra turn. Will he be able to take any more? We'll find out soon enough.
Yeah, he just draws a Sun Petal Grove for his turn. He might have another Nexus of Fate, I think, in his hand, so maybe take another extra turn. He would have loved to have a Teferi here. Remember, he still has the double Spell Pierce, and Basilico is tapped low. Basilico holding just a Disdainful Stroke here. So I think tapping a lot of mana again. So first a Cleansing Nova to get some breathing space. Ooh, this might be rough for Matthew Garnham. Just lets that resolve. And now I think we're going to see it, a Niv-Miss on the Italian side here, and that could be backbreaking.
This does seem like the time for it. If Basilico wanted to bait, he does have another Drake, though, and it looks like that might be what he goes for first.
No, just starts with an Enigma Drake first, leaving up mana again. leaving up that disdainful stroke. Remember, he was bluffing more spells, more action the turn before tapping out. So Garnham might just think that he's basically facing 2 counter spells here. Garnham drawing another land here in Glacial Fortress. So first, another Nexus of Fate.
Now, this is Nexus of Fate with 5 remaining mana up. So if you're Basilico, then it's like, well, how much do I care about you taking an extra turn, which is essentially you just sort of drawing another card, compared to what would happen if I used my counter magic and then you had Teferi. So Garnham there essentially being able to use Nexus of Fate as a bit of a test spell, and the Italian team saying, we're not going to be tested like that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're underselling a little bit here the situation of how actually tight it is. Doesn't seem that way, and maybe the Italian teams doesn't even realize that Garnham is down to 2 spell pierces in his hand. Doesn't have really much going on here, and that Enigma Drake is basically lethal if the Italians untap. So this is a huge draw for the Australians.
Yeah, you can see there Team Italy taking a good old time making sure that deck gets shuffled. Horrible feeling when you have to shuffle your opponent's deck. They're getting the next turn, and whatever they draw next could represent the victory or indeed the loss for your team. And this competition means so much to Italy. They've had so much success in it in the past. I know Andrea Mengucci, hungry for another title. He doesn't want any of the other countries to get a chance at it. There is a Disdainful Stroke in hand. There's Niv Mizzet ready to go, and it's just counter magic in hand for Garnham here. And counter magic is not going to be enough against this Drake.
Yeah, this is over. I mean, Basilico still has that Disdainful Stroke, so he might even feel safe against something like Settle the Wreckage or anything. He's looking to maybe thinking that, oh, I need something here. But he doesn't know he doesn't. He just has to attack with Enigma Drake, and it's all over.
Exactly 6 instants and sorceries in the graveyard. Exactly 6 life left for Australia. Here comes the swing. And there's the handshake. Italy wins. Italy will be advancing to the semi-finals. Andrea Mengucci, he's already had a first, he's already had a third, he's already had a fourth, and he will have at least one more 4th place as we advance to our semi-finals here. Big smiles from Italy. They've done it again, and you can see there Australia. They thought that they might be still in it, but ultimately it came down to the Izzet Drake's deck being able to take down Turbo Fog, and that means that we will be seeing Italy against France in our semi-finals.
Yeah, that's a great matchup. Remember, both Italy and France have won the World Magic Cup before, so they're going to face off for the right to win the 2nd title, something that no country has ever done at the World Magic Cup.
We are going to have an historic World Magic Cup here. Fantastic performance from both of those teams. Bad luck maybe a little bit to the Australians. They weren't able to advance any further, but Andrea Mengucci, this is his tournament. He has had more success at the World Magic Cup than most teams have ever had in the World Magic Cup, and we get a chance to see exactly how far he can push it as we go across to our semi-finals after these messages.